My grandfather was many things, but a good man was not one of them. In the spring of '96, shortly before his 66th birthday, I witnessed him being hauled off to the big house for the kidnapping and murder of 4 young boys. I was barely 9 at the time. Being so young, I hardly understood what was happening. All I knew was that my whole world was being shattered. As I grew up, I learned of the depraved acts of violence he committed, either through television or internet. That wasn't to say that I was completely convinced. After all, this man had practically raised me. True, I knew what it was like to experience the sharp whip of a belt, but he never mistreated me. In fact, most of my memories growing up were enjoyable when I thought about him. So how could this man, who I loved and respected, possibly have committed such vile acts? It was a question that plagued me for years, especially after the trial was over and he was given the death penalty. I often wanted to find an excuse to visit him in the county lockup while he lived out his last days in a padded isolation cell. To have him tell me in his own words why he did these things. But I never found the courage. Last month, we got a notification from the state that they finally gave the go-ahead to carry out his sentencing. Death by lethal injection. It was this incident that actually spurred me to go down and have a final word with the old man. I figured it would need to be now or never. My brothers and sisters all felt it was a waste of time, but I wanted to be absolutely sure that the person we grew up with was, in fact, the devil. It was raining when I arrived outside of the correctional center. Claps of thunder shook the heavens, and an eerie fog hung low over the air. A fitting pall cast over the dreary thoughts that plagued me. As was standard procedure, I left all my personal belongings at the front security checkpoint. Then the guard led me down a series of maze-like corridors toward what seemed like the bowels of the earth itself. Eventually, we arrived at one of the private wards where the most dangerous prisoners were kept, and the officer gestured to the last cell on the left, where I saw a glimmer of a man I once knew. It was clear by the blood on his shirt and skin and the bruises on his scalp and chest that he had not been receiving proper care. I was expecting to meet a monster, something so hideous in demeanor and stature that I could at last come to peace with all the sins I've been told. Yet instead, I found myself looking at a trembling, frail elder, barely able to stand up, let alone raise a threat to anyone here. "Are you staying for his final meal?" the guard asked. I felt such a whirlwind of emotions, trying desperately to reconcile all the feelings I had for this man. It took every bit of strength for me to nod my head towards the officer. Once alone, with my grandfather shackled to a table and given nothing except a plastic spoon to eat with, it was time for answers. I began to launch a series of questions to him, anything to verify the accusations made against him. Of course, I knew when he was arrested, the police had indisputable evidence. But I wanted to hear it from his own lips. Instead of answering me, though, my grandfather slowly ate his meal, seemingly accepting his fate. I was beginning to think I came here for nothing. Finally, I let out a long sigh. pushing aside the food and forcing him to look me in the eye. "Don't you realize that you're about to die? Don't you want the world to know why you committed such evil?" I shouted at him. I saw a mixture of emotions in that man's eyes that I will never forget. And then he did something that surprised me and began to use his untrimmed fingernails to scrawl a message onto the table in front of me. He did it slowly and deliberately, so as not to attract the attention of the guards outside his cell. And when he finished, I felt a cold lump in my throat, immediately recognizing the shortened number of a storage unit he rented on the south side of town. I quickly memorized the sequence and then scrawled the table a bit more to prevent any of the officers from reading it before being asked to leave. Then, I asked the guard how long it would be before the actual execution, and he gave me a timeline for the next morning. That gave me less than 5 crucial hours to find Grandpa's storage unit and discover whatever secrets he had hidden there. Despite the late hour, I didn't miss a beat driving to the downtown district. The complex in question was one of several businesses along a strip that offered the same services. The perfect hiding spot for criminal activity without even realizing it. This one in particular was a little more downtrodden than the others. There was nothing besides a rudimentary keypad to protect the units, and with the code I had been given, bypassing it took only seconds. There weren't any security cameras or even streetlights to guide my way to the correct unit, but I had been here so often with him I probably could have found the place with my eyes closed. Back when we were just kids, Grandpa was a vending machine operator and would often store his broken down candy slots in the place along with any other knickknacks he liked to collect. The unit itself was sealed up by the cheapest of bicycle locks, which I broke with ease. I would like to pretend this was my first time ever breaking and entering into a place, but a childhood of foster care and bouncing from one home to another tells a different story. Inside the wide trailer, I smelled damp furniture and old food. It was a musty, grimy odor that made me cover my mouth in repulsion. And then I used my smartphone and started to scour the place for any sort of clues. Mentally, I wished that I had the time to ask more detailed questions from him about what I was looking for. I checked old books he collected first, followed by old movies. It felt like I was taking forever to find anything possibly relating to the missing kids. Then, a little after midnight, I came across a small shoebox labeled Sessions that gave me pause. Call it a sixth sense, but something felt off about it. So I slid it out and found precisely 5 blank VHS tapes inside, all of which looked to have about 30 minutes worth of film on them. Nothing exactly special, but again, I felt this odd tingle on the back of my spine that told me this was the right box. I left immediately, doing my best to cover my tracks and get out of there before any random bystanders decided to be nosy and see what I was up to. As I drove off, my mind was admittedly all over the place. I didn't know what could possibly be on these tapes, and I wasn't even sure I wanted to find out. The decision was made at the next traffic light. A luminous neon billboard from a pawn shop only a few streets down caught my eye. So I parked and ran inside, spending about 5 minutes pretending to browse before using cash to buy a VCR. couldn't have sped home any faster. Setting up the equipment took a little bit, but once I was ready, I actually found my hands shaking. Did I really want to do this? I said a prayer, and then I popped in the first tape. The screen was filled with a burst of static, and then I found myself staring at the frame of a 7-year-old boy. It was easy to see that he was sitting in a small room no larger than a broom closet, wearing nothing besides simple school clothes. He was doing his best not to look scared as a voiceover narration began. Subject 1, Day 5. I've done my best to remove every element from the room, but there have been no signs of starvation. I am forced to consider other options leading to expiration. I had to stop the tape. My head was already swimming. That was undoubtedly the voice of my grandfather. And here he was talking so candidly about keeping food from a poor child. I couldn't even fathom continuing with the tape. But still, something compelled me further down this road. I fast-forwarded to see a few similar sessions. Grandpa was now attempting to sedate the poor boy with a horse tranquilizer, and I saw the child scream. I stopped watching after that. What did my grandfather hope I could learn by watching some vile acts? My hands literally shook as I popped in the second tape, noting it was already wound toward the end. I thought that would mean I wouldn't have to watch more torture. I was wrong. Subject 2, Day 33. I have had little choice but to resort to more violent means. The subject is being given a weapon that I have chosen to help with the extraction. I will be observing the process as best as possible, Grandpa said. It was a carving knife. He gave that poor child a carving knife. After being locked in a cage for over a month with little food or water, I knew full well what Grandpa expected to happen. I stopped the tape right before the boy picked up the weapon. I covered my mouth and muffled a scream as I threw some random objects around the room. This couldn't be real. It couldn't. But the evidence was too strong to say otherwise. Despite the fact that I knew worse was likely to come, I had to discover the truth. So I picked up the one tape with a label on it. It was partially torn, but I gathered it read, "Information." The tape started with Grandpa addressing the camera. The creature has moved from Subject 2 to Subject 3. My hopes of collecting it were futile. It seems that now I have little choice but to cause the third child. No, I mustn't grow an attachment. He was rambling, and I didn't understand what he meant about a creature. I saw tears in his eyes as he adjusted the camera. Subject 3 is a 10-year-old. I tried my hardest to keep him away from the others, but it would seem my initial theory of the bond for all four was correct. It can only mean that the answer is complete and utter annihilation of the entire group. Grandpa paused, looking at the trembling boy and muttering, I only wish they could understand what it is I do for them. I stared at the grainy image. his words sounding hollow and meaningless for a moment, until I gathered them together to make sense. He was talking about these children as though they were possessed. Was he attempting some sort of folkish exorcism on these 4 children? I drove toward the prison once more, desperate for closure. He sent me on this path, so I knew he would have answers. The guards were already preparing to strap him down for the injection when I arrived and locked eyes with him. "I need to ask him one thing, please," I said, my voice trembling. The nurse preparing the lethal dose stopped and I ran to my grandfather's side, trying to see under that mask of innocence the evil that he had done. "Please, tell me, is it true? Why? Did you really believe that what you were doing was right?" I asked, tears trailing down my cheeks. He gave me the saddest of smirks and squeezed my hand. "You saw everything, my child. Go now. Be free of this curse," he warned me. I could not stay. I could not come to terms with the madness that had driven him so far from me. The silent drive home felt like a procession, a funeral for someone that no one cared about. I didn't dare to believe his secret. I gathered the courage to burn the tapes, to destroy that evil once and for all. But before I did, I told myself, I needed to be 100% sure of what I believed. So I watched the final tape. My grandfather was many things, but a good man was not one of them. I found out that he carried all our sins the day I watched that last tape. And I found I was looking at the younger frame of myself. If I am successful here, I shall transfer the demon from my grandson to my own body. I shall then, at last, be able to free this world of this menace. I touched the screen with more tears. I was happy. I was sad. I was devastated. And I understood everything. And yet, as the tape faded to black, and I watched my lifeless body convulse, I saw a flicker of a shadow. I understood nothing. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to help out the channel and the production of more videos, I'd really appreciate it if you consider donating on Patreon. More funding means better, longer, and more frequent videos. Thank you. I'll see you guys in the next video.